So we're going to solve negative x squared plus 6x minus 10 equals 0. And the first thing I would usually do is I would when I see this, the first thing I always try to do is to solve by graphing. And solving by graphing, it's a method that works as long as it crosses at whole numbers. But if it crosses at like 2.317, then sometimes we need an exact answer, and graphing isn't the best method. So let me go and see. So I just graphed this, and I'm looking, when does this cross the x-axis? Well, it doesn't in the real number system. So for this one, I'm going to put no real solution. And there is a solution. It's imaginary, it's complex. So I can't find the solution. That's an n. Can't find the solution by graphing. So graphing failed. Let's try factoring. I kind of already know it's going to fail because it's a trinomial, but when you're factoring, and there's a negative out front, you factor it out. And we covered that together. So you factor out the negative, that changes that to positive, negative, positive, and now we're looking for two numbers that multiply to 10 but add to negative 6. What multiplies to 10 but adds to negative? So we thought, what multiplies to 10 adds to negative 6? The only thing that multiplies to positive 10 and adds and possibly adds to a negative is negative 1 and negative 10, negative 2 and negative 5. None of those are going to add up to negative 6. So I can't solve this by factoring. And sometimes that happens. Sometimes you can't solve by factoring. If you could solve everything by factoring, that's how I would teach you and we would be done. But we've already found our two favorite ways don't work. So really, whenever you get an imaginary solution, you should automatically think of the quadratic formula, which is x equals negative b plus or minus square root b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. Now I know a is negative 1, b is 6, and c is negative 10. So all I need to do is substitute in there. So negative b, that'd be negative 6 plus or minus b squared. So b squared, be 6 squared. And then a is negative 1. And c is negative 10. All over 2 times a, and a is negative 1. See, so now I need to simplify this. This would be 36 And then negative times negative times negative is going to be negative. And then 4 times 10 is 40. So this is really what is 36 minus 40. That'd be negative 4. And then 2 times negative 1, negative 2. Now anytime there's a negative in the radical, you pull it out and make it an I. And we know that the square root of 4 is 2. So I can replace this with 2i. Divide them all by negative 2. Negative 6 divided by negative 2 is 3. And then 2 divided by 2 is 1. So I got 3 plus or minus I, or 1i. So now I'm going to try completing the square. And when you're completing the square, you move the constant over. So I moved the negative 10 over, added 10 to both sides. And then if there's an a term, you factor it out. So technically there is, it's negative 1. So I factor it out. And then I ask myself, how can I complete the square? So what can I put here? And also, whatever you do to one side, you do to the other. So the way you know how to complete the square is you take this number right here, the negative 6, and I'll do it up here. You divide it by 2, which is negative 3, and then you square that number. So you take this number, you divide by 2, which is negative 3, and then you square it. So 9 is what we would call the number we need to add right here to complete the square. Now I can't just put 9 here because this is really 9 times negative 1. So we're going to put negative 9 right there. From here, we're looking for two numbers that multiply to 9 but add to negative 6. That'd be negative 3 and negative 3. So I could write that as x minus 3 squared. And then 10 plus negative 9 is 1. And then I'll divide both sides by negative 1. And so now that I have a square, I could take the square root of both sides. And when you take the square root, you have to do the positive and the negative. But the square root of negative 1 is I. Solve for x, add 3 to both sides, and you get x equals 3 plus or minus I. And notice that's the same thing we just got by using the quadratic formula. Okay, so I just took negative x squared plus 6x minus 10. I solved the 4 ways, and then real fast, square roots. I can't use square roots because it has an x term, so I can't solve using square roots. there we go. We took the problem. We tried solving by factoring. It didn't factor. We completed the square, which is probably something new you've never seen before, and I got 3 plus or minus I. I used the quadratic formula and also got 3 plus or minus I. It didn't cross the real number system, so I put no real solution, can't solve by graphing, and we couldn't use square roots because it had an x term.